Hello, everyone. Good evening. We are less than a week away from Pesach. And so instead of our regular Hilchot Shabbat, which we will resume Bezat Hashem after Pesach, I wanted to do something different tonight. In the past couple of years, we've gone through Hilchot Pesach, both in the Shulchan Aruch and practical halachot, and that's all available on the YouTube channel. So if you want the practical halachot in terms of Pesach, you can listen to that. And in terms of the Shulchan Aruch as well, we've been through much of the Shulchan Aruch in previous years. This year, what we're going to do is we're going to go through two chapters in Harambam, the penultimate chapter and the final chapter, chapters 7 and 8. We're going to go through them both and see how the Rambam would have conducted his Seder. Okay, where there are points which are not which are not practiced today, I will mention. But I think it's valuable to see, at the very least, how the Rambam understood, how the Rambam would have conducted his Seder all those years ago, 800, 900 years ago, how he would have conducted his Seder. So that's what we're going to do. We've got two chapters to get through, chapters 7 and 8 of Chot Hametz Umatzah, the laws of Pesach. I'm going to post the link here, but I'm also going to share. Okay, here it is. And we're going to go through them fast. Of course, feel free to ask questions as we go along. And yeah, let's get straight into it. So, Hilchot Hametz Umatzah, we are in chapter 7. Let's go. Chapter 7, Halacha Aleph. Mitzvot Aseh shel Torah lesaper banisim v'niflaot. So chapter 7 is very much about the Haggadah, and chapter 8 is practically what the Rambam would do. So that's why I've decided to do chapter 7 and 8 together. It's quite a lot to get through, so we're going to go through fast. מצוות עשה של תורה לספר בניסים ונפלאות שנעשו לאבותינו במצרים בליל 15 בניסן שנאמר זכור את יום הזה אשר יצאתם ממצרים כמו שנאמר זכור את יום שבת. There's a biblical obligation to talk about all the miracles and the wonders which Hakadosh Baruch Hu did for our ancestors in Egypt on the 15th of Nisan when we left Egypt. As the Torah says in Parashat Bo, remember the day you left Egypt, and also it says, remember Shabbat. Let's just finish off. How do we know it has to be done, this mitzvah of talking about the miracles of Pesach on the night of the 15th? Talmud lomar v'gadata lebincha b'yom hu lemor ba'avur zeh. You should tell your children, and whenever the Torah, just quickly, whenever the Torah says ben without but, normally that's children, not just boys. Okay, ben means a boy when there's a but next to it. When it's just bincha, it means your children. Tell your children on this day, because of this, b'sha'a, which the Gemara explains, b'sha'a shesh matzah u'maror munachim lefanecha. When you have matzah u'maror, which is there's a mitzvah, the Torah tells us clearly to eat on the 15th night. To eat matzah and maror. So, just like the mitzvah of eating the matzah and the maror is on the night of the 15th, so too the mitzvah is to tell them also on the night of the 15th. Af al pi she'en lo ben, even if you don't have children, you still have to talk about it. Afilu hachamim gedolim hayavim lesaper yitzat Mitzrayim. Even however wise you are, however knowledgeable you are, the more you talk about it, the more praiseworthy you are. So, I just unshared it, doesn't show people can. Okay, so now a couple of points. So what we're learning in this halakha is a mitzvah from the Torah to talk about the miracles, and we learn it out, just like the matzah and maror is on the night of the 15th. So too, we have the mitzvah to talk about Egypt. It's interesting. Firstly, just to point out, Rambam holds the mitzvah is the whole night. Just like Rambam holds that all the mitzvot can be done the whole night. In practice nowadays, we try to be particular to complete the mitzvah of eating the matzah and other associated mitzvot by Hatzot. It's a debate in the Rishonim. There's a debate in the Rishonim. Just 1 second, please. 1 second, sorry. There is a debate in the Rishonim whether the mitzvot of Pesach have to be done by Hatzot or by dawn. The Rambam held all the way through consistently that the mitzvot could be done the whole night, which is why, according to Rambam, there's a mitzvah the entire night to speak about leaving Egypt. And by the way, I've said this many times in the past, many people are particular to stay awake on Shavuot night, to stay awake on Hoshana Rabbah night, stay up the whole night studying. Lovely minhag, great. It's not recorded anywhere in the Shulchan Aruch. The only place in the Shulchan Aruch where he says actually to stay up the whole night is on Pesach night. Okay? He says that you should continue talking about, because the Rambam holds there's a mitzvah to talk about Egypt the whole night. That means the more you talk, the greater the mitzvah. So there's a mitzvah to discuss and talk about Mitzrayim all the night until, as Shulchan Aruch says, "Ad shetahtafenu shena," until sleep gets the better of you and you fall asleep. Which is why really on Pesach night we should be going to sleep with a Pesach book, something talking about the miracles of Pesach, whether it's Me'am Lo'ez, whether it's commentaries on the Haggadah, whatever it may be. But one should really fall asleep. Okay, go to bed, get into pajamas, get into bed, yeah, but go to sleep with Pesach on one's mind because there's a mitzvah the entire night to talk about Egypt. So that's important to recognize. The halacha is that we try to do things before Hatzot, for the other Rishonim. And that's how the Shulchan Aruch does rule, that we should do all the mitzvot before Hatzot. But we should know that according to Rambam, there's still a mitzvah the entire night to talk about Egypt and all the miracles, and that's what we should continue to do. Now, many question, what's the Rambam bringing Zachoret Yom HaShabbat for? Why is he bringing, what's the connection between remembering Egypt to remembering? Many explanations are given. In short, two main things we learn out from this. Firstly is, just like we learn from Zachoret Yom HaShabbat, there's a mitzvah to say Kiddush with one's mouth. One has to say it, express it. Even if you're alone, you still say Kiddush. So too, even if you're alone, we learn from this. You got no children, you got no spouse, you're having Seder night alone. And people did this in COVID. I remember people asking this during COVID. People who were having Seder alone, you still have to talk about the mitzvah, just like there's a mitzvah to say Kiddush. So too, you have to say the whole Pesach, the whole Haggadah by yourself. And number two, we also learn from this is women are equally obligated. And Rambam holds that women are equally obligated in the mitzvah of the Haggadah and talking about Egypt. So it's a mistake. Sometimes women can be hours and days in advance preparing, and then they reach Pesach night and they're shattered and they sleep during the night during the Seder. That's really really a shame, because they have an equal mitzvah just like men do, just like Zachor Yom Shabbat. Because women are obligated in the negative, they're obligated in the positive. Women are obligated in Kiddush like men are. So too, just like women are obligated in the matzah, in the hametz, in the matzah of Pesach, they're also obligated equally to talk about Egypt. So there's an equal obligation the entire night for men and women to talk about Egypt. Yes, Will.
Yeah, I mean, so I think this is an interesting one. This is some, I've heard this several times. I mean, I'm trying to get my head around this. I mean, my take of the reason why women and men are both obligated to do this on the same level is just because of the gravity of Pesach for the Jewish people. It's literally a retelling and a reimagining of what was happening there thousands of years ago. And so it's so important that it has to be women and men doing it at the same time. That's my take from it. I mean,
Yeah,
what
on a practical level, you're right, because it's something so fundamental, so
mm,
foundational, women are equally obligated, but that's from a philosophical stand view. But you also have to examine this from a legal stand view, which is normally women are exempt from positive mitzvot, which are time bound. This is
right.
a positive mitzvah. It's time bound. So women, according to the natural legal rules, should be exempt. But no, on legally they're obligated. Of course, philosophically you're right, but you've said it's all true philosophically. Yeah,
Mhm.
and theologically, if it's foundational, all of that. But legally, why are they obligated? That's what we're explaining. Just like on Shabbat, women are obligated in Kiddush, even though it's positive and time bound, because there's the connection in the negative and the positive. So too, Rambam is saying women are also obligated in women as in women reading Haggadah, because they're obligated in all the negatives of Pesach, like don't eat hametz and so on and so forth. So
Mhm.
there's a legal stand view and there's also the philosophical stand view. What you explained was the philosophical one. What I've explained is the legal one.
Thank you.
Halacha bet. Number two. Mitzvah lo odia labanim afilu lo sha'alu. You have to tell your children even if they haven't asked. Shneimar v'gadeta lebincha. It doesn't say answer back ve'shivota. It says you should tell them even if they don't ask. Lefi dato sheben adam melamdo. Your father teaches him according to how knowledgeable, how astute the child is. Ketzad. If he was a stupid, if he was a simple child, Omer, he says, Bini, כולנו היינו עבדים כמו שפחה זו, כמו עבד זו במצרים, ובלילה הזה פדתנו הקדוש ברוך הוא אצלנו חירות. We were all once slaves and הקדוש ברוך הוא took us out. ואם היה בן גדול וחכם, if the child is more advanced, מודיעומה שאירע לנו מצרים בניסים שנעשו על ידי משה רבנו, הכל לפי דרש רבנו, you explain in greater detail. So, little children, 3, 4, 5, Shem took us out of Egypt on this night. That's it. For the older children, you elaborate, you discuss, explain more. Rav Kapach points out, by the way, most of what I'll be saying tonight is based on Rav Kapach. So I went through this with Rav Kapach's commentary, which is his commentary is amazing, but especially on this. But he points out that Rambam was unique, well, relatively, well, he was not exclusively unique, but he was unique in that he always likes to give examples and draw pictures in his commentaries and stuff. And here as well, notice when Rambam says how you explain to your children, he says, when the young child, what you say to him, we were all servants like this servant. He's trying to tell you, don't just speak, also play it out. Play it out, like show him. Look, you have people in those days, they had people like the people there who were servants, etc. Show them, give an example, give a practical example, express it out, show it to them so that they actually can actually live it and not just speak about it. Yes, Robert. Okay, next.
Yeah, just a quick question. I'm afraid I'm going back to the previous point. So other people hold that the women are obligated because of Sha'apem Hayuboto Hanes. They were also
That's not
redeemed.
correct. That's not correct. That's with the Arba Kosot. That's with the 4 cups. That's the rabbinic, because of the Arba Kosot, Afena Yubona, that's the reason given. Tosfot gives for why they're obligated in the 4 cups, which is also positive and time bound. So there comes into play Afena Yuboto Anes.
Okay, so I think I may have missed then how we get to them being obligated in Haggadah, in the Haggadah.
But I don't know if I explained it at the beginning. I don't know, you may have missed it.
All right, I'll listen to the recording. I probably missed it. Fine.
הלכה ג' צריך לעשות שינוי בלילה הזה כדי שיראו הבנים וישאלו ויאמרו מה נשתנה הלילה הזה מכל הלילות עד שישיב להם ויאמר להם כך וכך אירע כך וכך היה. You need to do things differently on this night to arouse the inquisitiveness of the attendees, especially the children. וכיצד משנה? What do you do differently? The Gemara gives 3 examples. The Rambam quotes all 3 examples. מחלק להם כליות ואגוזים. You give them nuts in those days. Today we would say sweets. ועוקרים השולחן מפניהם קודם שיאכלו. And also you remove the table before they eat. So in those days everyone had their individual, that's how they would eat. You see clearly they would have, each one would have their own individual table. So one of them would move away, or a couple of them would move their table away, like put it to the side, like what's going on now? We're sitting down to eat and now we're moving the table away. We don't have that nowadays because we have one large table. So what we do instead is we remove the Seder plate. That's the kind of fulfilling this idea in the Gemara of removing the table. So we remove the Seder plate. But it used to be you would remove your individual table to do something. And number 3, the Gemara says, "Hotfin matzah ze mi'adzeh v'chayotze b'dvarim elu." Also, so the Gemara says hotfin. The question is what this word means. Some Rishonim interpret this word. The Rambam doesn't. Clearly not. Some interpret this mean that you go through the Seder quickly so that the kids don't fall asleep. So you go quickly through the Haggadah, you go quickly through through everything so that the kids will be able to stay awake for the whole thing and to be able to participate in all the mitzvot of the night. That's one interpretation, Torim. Chotfim, from the expression to do it quickly. Rambam doesn't understand it. Like that, Rambam understands that you like pass the matzah around and snatch it around from one another, like to make some kind of curiosity about this. How this is played out in practice today is the custom of definitely, I don't know about everyone, but certainly the Syrians and the Iraqis, is that we pass the matzah around from person to person. And we reenact and demonstrate what happened. The matzah, we hold the matzah on our back and we say, where are you coming from? Where are you going? That's where it comes from. It comes from this. So those are 3 things mentioned in the Gemara to make some kind of difference. Sweets, remove the Seder plate, and pass the matzah around to arouse the curiosity. En lo ben ishto sharto. If you don't have children, then you converse and have this dialogue why this night is different with your spouse. En lo isha shalin zeh zeh meshtan zeh. If you don't have a wife, that you ask your colleague. Afilo yukran hachamim. Even if many rabbis sitting together, still you ask each other. Hayalevado shoel atzmo meshtan zeh. Even if you're alone, you still have to ask. You still have to, even if you're having said, you still have to ask ma'ashtana. And I've talked about this in the past. normally a question, you ask a question to get an answer. Uh, so if I'm by myself and then why can't I just go to the answer? The explanation is asking is an essential part of the intellectual freedom of Pesach in the sense that we reenact our physical freedom, we lean, we eat matzah, and so on and so forth, many things which we do throughout the year to reenact our physical liberation. But also, in Egypt, we weren't able to think. Mesilat Yesharim, Rav Rotsato talks about this. Paro made the work so overbearing, we weren't able to think, we weren't able to contemplate. And so we weren't free intellectually. Asking a question is the greatest demonstration of freedom of thought when you can question and challenge. And so that's why, perhaps, that's why the Gemara and the Rambam say that you have to ask, even alone, you have to ask yourself to reenact the intellectual freedom of asking questions. Dalit. צריך להתחיל בגנות ומסיים בשבח. When you go through the story of Egypt, you have to begin with the negative and then end with the positive. כיצד? מתחיל ונספר שבתחילה היו אבותינו בימי תרחם ולפניו כופרים בטועין אחר ההבל ורודפין אחר עבודת האלוהים ומסיים בדת האמת שקרבנו המקום לו להבדילנו מהאומות וקרבנו ליחודו. So you begin talking about how our ancestors were idol worshippers in the times of Avraham Avinu's father, and they went after all the wrong things. But in the end, we came to Har Sinai and we accepted God and the Torah, and He separated us from nations, and He gave us His Yichud Hashem. And also, you begin with Sha'avadim Ayinu L'Fabo Mitzrayim. We were once slaves to Pharaoh, v'chol ha'asher gamalanu, and all the bad we went through. Our lives were embittered, the hard work, the straw. Umsayem benisim nifot, and you conclude with all the miracles which Hashem did for us, and He liberated us. You read all the Haggadah, all the verses which talk about it. The more you talk, the more you explain, the more you discuss, the better it is. Couple of points. Firstly, it seems to be the Harambam's Haggadah started with Mitahila first. So we have Avadim, we have Manishtan at the beginning. Okay, that definitely Rambam began with. And then normally we say Avadim Hayinu first. And then we go to Mitahila, our ancestors were idol worshippers. It seems to be Rambam had the opposite way. He began with the spiritual change, the spiritual liberation first, and then the physical liberation, Avadim Ayinu second. It seems to be the way he puts it seems to be that he had in his Haggadah Mitahila first. Fine. The point is we need to do both. We need to talk about how first we were spiritually poor and then we were spiritually rich with the Torah, and secondly, how we were physically poor, we were servants, and then we were physically liberated. Both aspects. Notice, and Rambam over and over again, he always talks about the Yichud Hashem. Okay, notice how we conclude with the true truth that Hashem brought us near and separated us from nations and gave us the Torah, and He brought us near to His unity. We'll see this in Moreh Nevuchim, right? And we see this also when he talks about converts, how you have to tell converts at length about the Yichud Hashem. Yichud Hashem, the unity of God, the oneness of God, is something central in Rambam's thought. Also in the Ramchal's thought, he followed through in that same vein. The idea of the Yichud Hashem being so central. We have to also mention and talk about the Yichud Hashem on Pesach night. Okay, that's an important point to remember. The Yichud Hashem, the unity of God on Pesach night, to talk about that and to remember that on the nights of Pesach. Okay. Next. Halacha. Let's just do a couple more halachot. We'll take questions. A couple more. You have to say three things. Very important to say these three things. Pesach, matzah, maror. פסח, השם שפסח המקום בתי אבותינו מצרים, שנאמר ואמרתם זה בפסח הוא, מרור השם שמורו ממציאים את חיי אבותינו מצרים, מצה, השם שנגאלנו, ודברים אלו כולה נקרא הגדה. Everything we said until now is the Haggadah, everything which you said earlier on, עבדים היינו, מתחילה, and also talking about the Pesach, מצה ומרור. Pesach, Hashem passed over, מצה, maror, because our lives were embittered, and matzah, Hashem took us out, and it reminds us of the freedom. So we have to say these 3 points. And this is the crucial point which women have to say. Okay, they have to say Manishtana, Avadim Hayinu, and Mitechila, and Pesach matzah maror. These are the essential things that needs to be said. הלכה ו' בכל דור ודור חייב אדם להראות את עצמו כאילו הוא בעצמו יצאת משיבוד מצרים. Every generation, you need to show yourself as if you are leaving now Egypt. שנאמר ואותנו הוציא משם. The verse says God took us out, even though that was 40 years later and it was a new generation. Nonetheless, still he took us out. We have to feel like we're going out. ועל דבר הזה צבא הקדוש ברוך הוא בתורה וזכרת כי עבד היית במצרים. כלומר, כאילו אתה בעצמך היית עבד יצאת לחירות ונפדית. This is what the Torah says many times in the Torah. Remember you in Egypt. That means us here in 2026. Remember you are in Egypt. So actually, there's different texts in the Gemara. The Ashkenazi text is lir'ot et atzmo. You have to actually see and feel it yourself, which can be very hard. How can we as free people in 2026 feel like we're servants? Rambam's text, and that's the text here in the Mishneh Torah and is in Haggadah, is leharot et atzmo, which is hif'il, which is causative, which means to show, to reenact. Not necessarily you're going to feel actually you're leaving Egypt, but at the very least to play it out, to act it out, to do things to this is why we lean, this is why we put the matzah on our backs, this is why we do all the things which we do, we put cushions, all the things which we do to reenact it, leharot et atzmo, to make it as if we are leaving Egypt now. Even if you don't actually feel it, there is still value, and this is how the Rambam says this is how you do it, is that you show yourself. And by the way, that's how the Shulchan Aruch also writes. The Shulchan Aruch also says leharot et atzmo, to show yourself. So it's not necessarily about feeling it. Of course, if you can feel it, even better. But at the very least, as the Rambam Shulchan Aruch writes, to show yourself as if you are leaving Egypt now. Yes, Will.
Yeah, just going back to what you're saying about the oneness of God. When the Rambam was writing that, was he writing that in response to the fact that, like, you have this thing in Christianity with this whole like concept of Trinity, and that's clearly at odds with Judaism belief, or is it something specific to the um to the event and ceremony of the Passover to focus on the oneness of God?
Okay, the answer to that question will take many hours. The answer in short is no, it's got very little to do with the Trinity in Christianity. It's not something central in Rambam's negation of Yichud Hashem. It's something far deeper than that, something which I would refer you to my shiur on the unity of God and the second principle, which I can send you afterwards. It's something far deeper than that, and something which is far more central than that. And it's not just Pesach. Pesach is a manifestation of that, but it's the entire year, every moment of our lives, really. It's so central, okay? But it's beyond what I can go into now.
Thank
I
you.
can send you the when we did the second principle, I went into detail into that.
Thank you.
זין, 7, לפיכך, כשסועד אדם בלילה הזה צריך לאכול ולשתות ומסב דרך חירות. Because we have to reenact and pretend to believe in Egypt, we have to lean when we eat. Okay, but we have to lean when we eat. The Rambam says that, he writes this also in the next chapter, and the Shulchan Aruch writes this as well. If it's possible, we don't do this nowadays because we're not used to reclining during eating. But in those days, it was a common thing that to eat. So therefore, you would have the meal reclining. וכל אחד ואחד בין אנשים בין נשים חייב לשתות בלילה זה 4 כוסות של יין. Both men and women have to drink 4 cups of wine. Again, here it's because of the idea that they were part of the miracle. Even though the 4 cups of wine is a rabbinic mitzvah, it's not part of the juxtaposition of chametz together with matzah. So therefore, women should be exempt. It's a positive time by mitzvah. But he's saying here, women are obligated to drink in the night 4 cups because they were in the miracle, and therefore they also have to. En pohatin lo mehem, you can't have less than 4 cups. Even poor people have to find the money. We have to give them the money to give them 4 cups of wine. And you need to drink from each cup in the first instance. You need to drink a revi'it, which is, nowadays we say 86 milliliters. This is as opposed to Kiddush. Kiddush on Friday night, a cheekful, which is 40 something milliliters, depending on your cheek, but somewhere around 40 plus milliliters normally is a cheekful, which is sufficient for Kiddush on Friday night. But that's to proclaim. But to experience freedom, the Hachamim established you need to drink a revi'it. Therefore, in the first instance, one needs to drink a revi'it, 86 milliliters of for each cup. 8. Afilu ani Israel lo yochal ad yasev. Even poor people who are not used to reclining, not used to having such a... Sorry, one other thing on Halakha 7 I didn't mention. Notice in Halakha 7, he says both men and women are obligated to drink. The Gemara debates whether children are obligated, whether we have a mitzvah of chinuch for children. Okay, normally you would say anything which men have to do, children have to do as well. We educate them, right? But no, and Shulchan Aruch rules, by the way, the children are obligated. Shulchan Aruch does rule, but the Rambam rules that children are not obligated. He rules with the opinion that children are not obligated, simply because probably the opinion in the Gemara which says children aren't obligated is because it's wine and they don't need to take part in something like this. So there's two opinions in the Gemara. Rambam ruled that only men and women are obligated, children aren't. Shulchan Aruch rules that children are, but notably and significantly, Hamvadyat does say that if it's difficult for a family to be able to afford wine for grape juice for the children, then you can rely on the Rambam and you don't need to have the kids under bar bat mitzvah having, and you can give them other things like sweets to arouse their questions. That's an important point. You see in the Rambam, he says men and children, when a woman doesn't say children because he's ruling like the opinion, the children are not obligated. We don't have to be mehanech them and educate them in the mitzvah of the 4 cups. Even poor people need to lean, although they're not used to do that. A woman doesn't need to because normally a woman doesn't need to recline because they don't normally do so in front of their husbands. But prominent women do need to. And nowadays, our poskim wrote, already Knesset Agdola, Rambam Vinisti, 400 years ago from Turkey and others, that all our women, Sfaradi women, are hashuvot, are important, are prominent, and therefore the Shulchan Aruch rules that men and women, therefore we rule that both men and women do need to lean. Okay, Ashkenazim say no, women don't need to lean because nowadays we don't really lean when we eat anymore, so you don't need to. But Sfaradim do, because we take on that our women are all hashuvot and important. Even though you could argue that a child in front of his father needs to ask, no, there's implied consent that the father allows the child to sit in such a manner before him because this is the mitzvah. But a student before their teacher needs to ask. There isn't implied consent. The student needs to ask. Okay, so if you're having the Seder by your Rav on Seder night, the Rav should either say at the beginning, give permission to everyone to recline in front of me, or if he doesn't do that, then the student should ask, do I have permission to recline in front of you? Because normally you can't sit like that in front of your Rav, you can't sit there reclining in front. You don't lean to the right, you lean to the left, you recline to the left. If you just recline backwards or forwards, that's not called reclining, you have to recline to your left. The critical time where you have to recline is when you eat the matzah and when you drink the 4 cups. The rest of the time, it's good to recline as much as you can. If you can't, you can't. So that's why we say, as much as you can recline during the night when you're eating and drinking, that is the correct procedure. If you're comfortable and it makes you feel liberated and you enjoy that, then you should do that as much as possible throughout the evening. Next, Halacha 8. Okay, it's not so practical. In those days, the wine was very strong. Yeah, so you have to pour some water in it to make it nice, because otherwise it's very strong. It's too strong. Yeah, so ולא יבחוט בארבעתם הבאתי יין חי, שתה 4 כוסות אלו מיין שאינו מזוג, יצא די 4 כוסות ויצא די חירות, שתה 4 כוסות מזוגין בבת אחת, יצא חירות, יצא די 4 כוסות, יצא, שתה מכל כוס מן רובו יצא. Okay, Rambam is saying here, there's this very interesting Rambam. He's saying there's 2 points in drinking the 4 cups. There's the idea of drinking 4 cups, and there's also the idea of experiencing freedom. If you drink 4 cups in the appropriate place throughout the night, but you drink them not diluted in those days, then you've drunk 4 cups, but you haven't fulfilled the part of drinking and feeling free because it's too strong. You're not going to enjoy that. And if I drink diluted and proper good wine, which is appropriate and nice and wine which liberates you, but you drink it in one go, i.e., 4 cups in one go, yes, you've done the mitzvah of feeling free, but you haven't done the mitzvah of drinking 4 cups. So there's two elements. It's having 4 cups and experiencing freedom with each of the 4 cups. There's two. It's interesting. There's a lot of discussion about this. This idea. There's two parts to the mitzvah, but in short, there's two elements, and there's the element of having the 4 cups and also experiencing, and therefore you have to make sure the wine, which is why nowadays we say if you don't like wine, have grape juice. Really, Rambam would say wine's good, grape juice is not good enough. Yeah, he holds that throughout the year. Grape juice isn't good enough. But there's a point here of experiencing and enjoying yourself. If it's gonna be hard for you, then, but of course, if you're able to, it's best to have 4 cups of wine, non-mevushal wine for all 4 cups. And if it's hard for you to drink so much, you can drink b'di'avad, you fulfill with a cheekful. But in the first instance, you need to drink an entire revi'it. So very interestingly, next halacha, which is not what we do today, Sfaradim don't do this, Ashkenazim do. Kol kos v'kos ma'arba kosot mevarech alehem beracha b'fnei atzma. Each of the 4 cups, you say borei pei hagefer on it. Kos rishon omer alav kiddush hayom. First cup you say Kiddushon. Kos sheni korev Haggadah. Second cup you have the cup full and you read the whole Haggadah and then you drink at the end of the Haggadah before we wash our hands for the matzah. Kos shlishi Berkat Hamazon. The third cup we pour before Birkat Hamazon and say Birkat Hamazon with it. Kos revi gomer lavet halel v'racha Birkat Hashir. And the fourth cup we say Hallel with it. Ubena kosot. Okay, full stop. So interestingly, he says you say a bracha on each one. The Rif also held this. The idea is, the reason is because he held. Not because there's Hesehadat, not because you see clearly he doesn't hold. You're going to see later on he doesn't hold that there's an interruption and you need a new bracha, right? Like in Hilchot Brachot. Simply he holds that each cup is a separate mitzvah. Hamim established to drink 4 cups, and again there's so much ink spilled on this whole concept, but the Rambam clearly held that each of the 4 cups is the Chachamim established to drink 4 cups, but each cup is an individual mitzvah. They gave us 4 mitzvot to drink 4 cups, and therefore on each cup we say the bracha borei pei hagefen for the birkat hamitzvot. It's not a bracha of hanehenin, a bracha because between the first and second cup I may have forgotten, and therefore I'm saying a new bracha. No, it's not birkat hanehenin, a bracha of benefit. It's a bracha of mitzvah. Rambam holds each of the 4 cups is a mitzvah in its own right, and therefore you need to say a bracha on each one. The Rif also holds this. Why do we Sfaradim not do this? Because Rabbeinu Asher said that perhaps it's all one big mitzvah, and Rabbeinu Asher was doubtful. The Rosh said, since we're not sure, better not to say a bracha in vain, and therefore you only say a bracha on the first one, which is Kiddush, and the second cup, we're relying on the bracha at the beginning. And the third cup we say bracha because after Birkat Hamazon, so you need a new bracha, but we don't say a fourth one. So the Shulchan Aruch, because of Safek brachot, doubt in brachot, ruled like Rabbeinu Asher, like the Rosh, and therefore that's our practice that we do not say a bracha. Well, when I say we, I say those who follow the Shulchan Aruch, the majority of Sfaradim, do not say a bracha on the second and fourth cup. Ashkenazim do, like the Rambam, like the Rif, and like the Rema says to do so. Okay, and finally he concludes, You're allowed to drink throughout the Seder night, even if you want to drink extra wine. You're allowed to drink. The only time you shouldn't drink is between the third and fourth cup. Since you finished your food, we're concerned if you have an extra cup, you're going to become intoxicated, you won't be able to finish the Hallel, etc. It's interesting, he wasn't worried that you're going to become, if you drink between the first and second cup when you don't have food, you're going to become intoxicated. That's interesting. But the Shulchan Aruch does say, try not to drink between the first and second cup so you don't become drunk. But according to the Rambam, you're allowed to drink throughout. And halacha is, by the way, you can drink tea, coffee, anything which throughout the Haggadah, if it's going to help you, right? Coffee, some say better not to because coffee generally takes away appetite, and you want to eat the matzah and the rest of the night with appetite. Okay, but if you want water, you want tea, you want things to stimulate you, you can do so. Drink throughout the Haggadah. Yes, did you have a question, Robert?
Only in so much as if those that follow the Rambam, is it implicit then that because if you have one cup of wine, right, and you're having in mind to make a bracha later, then and then you have a cup in between, do you have to make another bracha on that? Because really, it's not carrying anymore. You had it,
On the
sort
wine,
of
you don't
seems a
have
bit
to say. If you're drinking wine during Haggadah, you don't have to say a bracha because you have the bracha at the beginning.
yeah, but the bracha at the beginning it doesn't last the whole meal according to the Ashkenazim and the Rambam because you're going to
Lasts.
make another bracha
It
in the
doesn't.
middle.
It lasts the whole meal.
So you're saying the second. So the first one is both Birchat Mitzvah and Birchat Nen, and then the
Correct.
second one
Birkat
is
HaMitzvah.
only Birchat Mitzvah. But it's unusual because it's not worded as it's difficult because it's not worded as a Birchat Mitzvah.
What should the
It's not.
Hachamim, what should they say? The mitzvah is to drink 4 cups. So, but you're saying Borei Pri HaGefen to drink the cup.
Okay, yeah, I suppose.
What should the bracha be? Ashek Shem Tzivanu
No,
Lishtat.
but I mean, a mitzvah lishtat yain or something.
That's Borei Pri
it,
HaGefen. He created the, okay, fine.
okay. Anyway, interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. It is, but we don't, yeah. Yudalef. Haroset, mitzvah midivei sofrim. The whole concept of haroset is a rabbinic idea. Zecher latit she'udim mitzrayim, to remember the cement, right, which they had to work with in Egypt, our ancestors. How do you make it? Lokhin tamarim or gorogorot or tzimokin. You take dates or figs or raisins, v'dorsinotan. You crush them, v'notnin letochan chometz. You put vinegar in them, umtablim otam betavim. You put spices in them. Elsewhere in Perush HaMishnah, Rambam writes they would put hyssop in it. Kmotit beteven, just like the straw in the cement. Mivin otar shacham pesach, and you have it. So that's how the Rambam had his haroset. Dates with vinegar and hyssop. Okay, ours is slightly different. Similar, but slightly different. Certainly not apples like the Ashkenazim do. Okay, he didn't have any of that. But like what we do nowadays, like the silan and the tamarim. Okay, achilat mar. What else is there on this? Okay, and no blessing. So this is interesting. It's interesting. Rav Kabach argues, why is no blessing said on the haroset? So he says because the simple explanation is because it's tafel. It's secondary to the other mitzvot because you always dip the matzah, whatever it is, you dip it into the haroset. So it's secondary. Why don't we say birkat mitzvah on haroset? Because it's secondary to the matzah, to the maror, Hachamim didn't institute bracha. Rav Kapach argues, the halacha, that if for whatever reason you were stranded on Seder night and you didn't have matzah, you didn't have maror, and you only had haroset, you should say a bracha, shekid isham totzon, al achilat haroset. I found that very novel. Okay, he's saying the only reason we don't say bracha is because it's secondary to the matzah maror, which you're saying a bracha on. But for whatever reason you wouldn't have the matzah maror, you would say a bracha on the haroset itself. That's a quite very very novel idea to me. י"ב, אכילת מרור אינה מצווה מן התורה בפני עצמה לתורה בהיא ברכת הפסח, שמצוות עשה אחת לאכול בשר הפסח על מצה מרורים, דברי סופרים לאכול המרור לבדו בלילה זה אפילו אין שם קורבן פסח. In the Torah, when we had the Paschal lamb, then we would have a mitzvah from the Torah to eat maror, because the Torah says eat the Paschal lamb together with maror. So we learn from this you're only obligated to eat the maror when you're eating the Korban Pesach. Nowadays you don't have the Korban Pesach, therefore all the eating of maror throughout the night of Pesach is only on a rabbinic level. Merorim amurim b'Torah. What does the Torah mean when it says eat maror? What's that? It's 5 things. Hazeret, olashin, tamcha, harhavina, and maror. 5 things it means. Okay, what are these 5 things? I'll read out to you the translation. I don't know what some of these things are. So the first one, hazeret, is romaine lettuce, according to most opinions. Endives, horseradish, date ivy, and wormwood. Okay, I don't know what exactly all of these things are. But the interestingly, the Rambam doesn't say this, but the Gemara does, and that is that hazeret, which is lettuce, is the best. And the reason for this, the Gemara says two reasons. Firstly, the Gemara says because it's got a drop. Its lettuce has a drop of sweetness to it, and the idea is that just like the it's bitter. It's meant to be bitter lettuce, but it's also a bit of sweet. So you got the bitter and the sweet together, and also so that's the best. The Gemara says mitzvah b'hazeret. The best is the hazeret, the remain lettuce. And secondly, the Gemara says because the Aramaic of hazeret is hasa, hasa, which means compassion. So like we're asking for compassion from Hakadosh Baruch Hu. So that's the Rambam doesn't say this. It's a question why he doesn't say that the best is hazeret, but then that's why we use hazeret. Clearly, the Ashkenazim didn't have it in the European countries, so they ended up using horseradish, the other ones, right? The other ones. But yeah. כל אחד מחמשת מיני מירקין ומרור, any of these five work, and if you ate a combination of these five together, a kazait, that would also be okay, and you can even have the roots. Okay, but it has to, but you can't cook them. If you cook it, then it doesn't work anymore. It has to still be the bitter state without. So that brings us into chapter 7. We have another 20 minutes, and we're going to do chapter 8. So basically, we've seen here some differences, some novel things that we've seen in terms of the cup, and so, and how Rambam frames the. Now he gets to the really practical. What do you actually do on the night of Pesach? Yes. Any questions on this chapter before we move on to chapter 8?
Yes, then Kada. Could I ask, going back to the Haroset, Rambam writes about Chometz, but that's not one of Shivat HaMashkim. So how would that,
Who said it has to be Shivat HaMashkim?
isn't that the principle?
No.
No?
That's a later idea. פירות שנשתבחו במצוות ישראל. No.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
Doesn't say it has to be.
okay, fair. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. Any other questions on Perek Zayin?
Yeah, what is a horseradish? What is that? Yeah, is it like radish?
No, nothing. No, no.
I've seen horseradish in a sauce like
It's
that.
white. It's the Ashkenazim in Yiddish. They call it chrein.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it in a jar and it's very spicy.
Very spicy, very sharp.
So in the Seder, you eat it like this from the jar?
Not
Or
we.
you
The
have to...
Ashkenazim eat it. No, they can't eat it from the jar. They have to eat the actual.
Oh, so what do we eat instead? We eat
We
which
have
hummus?
lettuce. We have lettuce instead.
But lettuce is not bitter.
Okay, so that's a whole discussion. What?
So could we have no? So yeah. I think lettuce is wrong. You have to eat a bitter lettuce, and that is called. It
Yeah.
could be the
Called what?
endives. Endives.
Maybe endives. Yeah. There's a discussion what exactly hazeret is. I mean, the custom of Syria and Lebanon was definitely to have lettuce, normal lettuce.
We have a bitter lettuce.
You had bitter lettuce in Lebanon?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah, it's like curly.
You remember that?
Yeah, it's curly. It's curly and it's bitter. It's like a lettuce, like leaves, like large leaves, very curly, and light green color. Middle green, but light, yeah, more
Okay,
light.
that's very interesting. Let me look into that to see actually what. Okay, I thought maybe they had. Okay, I thought that we had lettuce, but let me read.
I've seen it in Whole Foods.
Right. So yeah. Okay. Fine. Thank you for that, Marie. Okay, let's go now to chapter 8. Perek Het. סדר עשיית מצוות אלו בליל 15 כך הוא. In practice, what do we do now? בתחילה מוזגין כוס לכל אחד ואחד וברך ברי פגפן מערב קידוש היום מוזמן ושותה. We pour a cup for each person and you say ברי פגפן and kiddush and שהחיינו and you drink your cup. Some interpret from this word mozgin that others pour for you. There's a custom recorded in the Ramah that others pour for you. I don't know if the Rambam meant that, but some use that. Okay, there is a nice custom that each one pours for the person next to him. But in any case, we have a cup and we say, ואחר כך מברך על נטילת ידיים ונוטל ידיו. then you'd say the bracha asher kidishanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu netilat yadayim, and you wash your hands. So urhatz, according to the Rambam, you wash your hands with a beracha, and the reason being is very simple. And that's how the Rambam would do on Seder night. They would do kiddush and they would say asher kidishanu netilat yadayim, because you're about to dip a vegetable into a liquid, and the halacha is in the Gemara and the Shulchan Aruch that whenever you dip vegetables or fruit into liquids, you need to say a bracha. We're not going into the reason now. It's got to do with purity and ritual purity times, but that's the halacha. And that's what the Rambam and the Rif say to do. Why does no one do, why does Ashkenazim and almost all Sfaradim not do this today? Because Tosfot said that perhaps you do it without a bracha. Perhaps Tosfot said that nowadays, etc. Right? So that's why but the Shulchan Aruch does rule that throughout the year, whenever you dip fruit or vegetables in liquids, you need to wash your hands, do netilat yadayim, and that's halacha which we Sfaradim should do. The Ashkenazim stopped doing this, so they came along and they said, "Why do we wash our hands now?" To make the children ask. That's not correct. It was originally in the Haggadah that we wash our hands because of this idea that you wash your hands before dipping. I'm about to dip the karpas, the vegetable, into the liquid. Okay, but you see clearly Rambam held that a bracha would be said on Netilat Yadayim. Okay, Muviim Shulchan Aruch, and you bring you a table, because remember we said they all had small tables. Ve'alav, upon it is maror, yarak, a vegetable for karpas, umatzah, haroset, v'gufo shel keves hapesach u'basar hagigah shel and the paschal lamb and the chagiga offering. Bizman hazeh, we don't have the paschal lamb or the offering which you would bring when you came to Jerusalem. Mevi'in al shulchan shnei minei basar, echad zeh chapesach, echad zeh chel hagigah. It's nowadays, instead of that, we bring two pieces of meat. So quite different. Firstly, we've seen that he would say a bracha netilat yadayim. Secondly, they didn't have Seder plate, they had small tables. Okay, we don't have small tables nowadays, so in place of that we have the Seder plates. That's the place of that. And he would have the maror, he would have karpas on it, he would have the matzah, the haroset. But instead of having the meat and the egg, he would have two pieces of meat. Right? What's the idea of two pieces of meat? By the way, the Gemara is here. You can have a look after Pesachim 114 seems to be in the first instance. Well, one opinion clearly is you have to have two pieces of meat. And the idea being, why do we have the egg and the meat? Is to remember, the meat is to remember the Korban Pesach, and the egg is to remember the Korban Hagigah. There were two sacrifices in temple times, the actual Paschal Lamb, and then the Hagigah, the celebratory offering for Yom Tov. So the Rambam follows the opinion of the Gemara that you bring two pieces of meat, and you have on the Seder plate two pieces of meat. However, already in the Magid Mishneh, Vital, 600, and that's the Shulchan Aruch, that we have an egg nowadays, and I think that's the universal custom that we have an egg nowadays. I think that I'm not sure why that minhag developed. I think the idea is to try to make a differentiation between the two. So you see one's for Korban Pesach, one's for Korban Hagigah, right? But the Rambam says you have two pieces of meat on the Seder plate instead of meat and egg. Next, you say the blessing of once you washed your hands, you say the bracha b'rei adama, and you take a vegetable, and you dip it in haroset, ve'ochel kazait, and you eat a kazait. Everyone around the table needs to eat a kazait. Let's stop here. There's quite a lot to discuss here. So firstly, notice it makes no difference what vegetable it is. The Gemara says any vegetable works. The point is to say a bracha of borei peri ha'adama, and dip it. Okay, now the minhag developed for us Faradim is that we use parsley or lettuce. One of the two generally is we have parsley or lettuce, but it really doesn't matter. I think Ashkenazim have cucumber, I think, or carrot or something along those lines. You know what was common in Europe. It makes no difference. Any vegetable you see, Rambam wasn't particular. There's many ideas. They say celery is karpas, and karpas also means hard work, whatever it may be, But the idea is any vegetable works for karpas. That's the simple point. But notice is that he says everyone needs to eat a kazait. Okay, what's going on here? This is very important to understand, and it's also goes. Rambam followed Saadia Gaon and many others before him that for the karpas you need to eat a kazait, and there are Rav Kabach brings many proofs from the Gemara, quite strong proofs from the Gemara like this that the you need to have a kazait. But Rambam changed his view here. Earlier in his life, he held completely like Saadia Gaon that you would say Bore Pri Adama, you would eat a kazait, you would say Bore Nefashot after eating the kazait of karpas, and then in the meal later on, you would say Bore Pri Adama again, and then eat the maror. That's how Rambam held when he was younger. Later on in life, he retracted, and he held that you say Bore Pri Adama, you have a kazait, and you don't say Bore Nefashot. Because even though it's a long time, but because you're sitting there on the table, the bracha of Bore Pri Adama can continue all the way through till the maror, and therefore you don't need to say Bore Nefashot, because the Birkat Hamazon, which you're going to say at the end of the meal, will cover the kazait of karpas, which you ate at the beginning of the meal. If for whatever reason you said Bore Nefashot, you had a kazait of karpas, you said Bore Nefashot, according to Rambam, you don't need to, but you did say it. When you would come to maror, you would say Bore Pri Adama. Rambam holds that the maror, because even though it's lettuce and it's something which you could argue is eaten with bread, because it's coming now as the mitzvah, as part of the Pesach night, it's considered not part of the meal, and therefore you would need to say a bracha Bore Pri Adama on it. Yeah, okay. So, but you don't need to say Bore Nefashot, because the Birkat Hamazon at the end covers it. There are, according to the Rambam, so you have here really three things what to do, three different views. Saadia Gaon held Karpas, Bore Pri Adama, Bore Nefashot. Later on, you say Bore Pri Adama and Al Achilat Maror, and you eat Maror. Rambam held in the conclusion Karpas, Bore Pri Adama, eat a kazait, don't say Bore Nefashot, and your bracha will also hold for maror, and Birkat Hamazon will cover the kazait of karpas you ate at the beginning. What happened? Why do we not do that nowadays? Some of the Rishonim, Tosfot and other Rishonim, said that the Gemara doesn't say that you need to have a kazait. Every eating of hachamim is normally a kazait. No, the whole purpose of karpas, they say, is only to make a difference, to show a difference, to make people ask. Therefore, it's enough you just have a bit. So why should you not have a kazait? They were concerned. If you have a kazait, you have to say Bore Nefashot. And if you have to say Bore Nefashot, then you're going to enter a question whether you should say bracha on Maror Bore Pri Adama. And therefore, what happened is the conclusion in the Shulchan Aruch is that you have less than a kazait, and therefore you don't need to say Bore Nefashot, and therefore the bracha of Bore Pri Adama will go on the Maror, and you won't have to say bracha on the Maror later on. That's what we ended up doing today. Both Sfaradim and Ashkenazim do that today. So we have karpas, we don't have a kazait, and then we have in mind that Bore Pri Adama is also going in the maror later on. But you should know Rambam didn't hold that. Rambam held that you can eat, you should. It also boils down to, I think so, it boils down to what's the reason for karpas, right? Is it just to make the children ask and to make a difference, to do something different, and then you could perhaps argue you only need to have a drop? Or is it because the idea also, which you could say Rambam holds, it's a kind of hors d'oeuvres before the meal, which is a kind of aristocracy, right? Rambam doesn't say don't lean during karpas. It doesn't say that anywhere. And Rambam said lean as much as you can during the meal. It would seem to be, according to Rambam, you could lean during. I think the Rambam held that karpas was for hors d'oeuvres, a kind of aristocracy. And therefore, if that's the reason, Hachamim saying you need to have something substantial, you have a kazait. And therefore you need to say, and therefore you need to have a kazait of it. Okay? But if the reason is just because to make a difference, and then you could argue perhaps you need to have a bit. As I said, in practice nowadays, what we do is we have just a small bit, we have less than a kazait. But according to Rambam, you would say Bore Pri Adama and have a kazait and yeah. Okay, that's very interesting. Also interesting is Rambam says that you dip it into the haroset. Okay, not into salt water like we have nowadays. Saadia Gaon also said this. Tosfot disagreed. Tosfot said that no, because haroset is only mentioned in the Mishnah later on with the matzah and the maror. Okay, again, it could tie back to what the reason for karpas is. If the reason for karpas is for aristocracy and liberation, then you can understand why Rambam says to dip it into haroset. Okay. ואחר כך עוקרין השולחן מלפני כל ההגדה לעבודה. Then you take off the Seder plate. What do you notice? What's missing? There's no yahatz. Rambam had no yahatz. So this whole idea that 15 is very important. The Rambam didn't have 15 simanim. Right? There was no yahatz. He went from karpas, borei pri adama, straight to the taking off the Seder plate and doing the Haggadah. Umozgin kos sheni, and then you pour the second cup, v'kana ben shoel, and then you ask. ואומר הקורא, מה נשתנה עליי זה מכל הלילות? שבכל הלילות איננו מטביעים אפילו פעם אחת או שתי פעמים. All of the nights we dip once, tonight we dip twice. שבכל הלילות אנחנו נחמץ מצה עליי זה כמו מצה. Why are we only eating מצה tonight? כל הלילות אנו אוכלים בשר צלי שלוק מבושל עליי זה כמו צלי. All of the nights we eat both roasted and boiled. Tonight we only eat roasted. שבכל הלילות אנו אוכלים שהיה כל דורי זה מרורים. All of the nights we eat other vegetables, but tonight we're eating bitter vegetables. שבכל הלילות אנו אוכלים בין ישובים מסביבים עליי זה כמו מסביבים. All of the nights we eat both reclining and upright. Now tonight we're only eating reclining. Nowadays, we don't add in the extra sentence. All other nights we eat. Tonight we're only eating roasted because we don't have the Paschal lamb. And you say the Haggadah. You say the whole Haggadah like we learned earlier on. So the order of the Rambam is different. Okay, the order is slightly different. The major issue with the Rambam, which I'm not going to go into now, is he says we dip twice. All our nights we dip once, tonight we dip twice. It's not true according to the Rambam. Rambam, you dip 4 times. According to the Rambam, you dip the karpas in the haroset. You dip the matzah in haroset. You dip the maror in haroset. And then you dip another again, the korech. Okay? So that's a big question. Rav Kabach tries to reinterpret. Okay. But Rambam dips 4 times during the night. Okay, halacha 4, mahzir shulchan lefanav. Okay, I'm going to continue to finish. If you need to go at 7:45, you can go. I think it's beautiful. I'm going to continue till, I'll give you till 7:55. Okay, we'll finish by 7:55. If you need to go 7:45, that's fine. We return the table and we say, Pesach Hashem. We return the Seder plate and we say, Pesach Hashem Pesach Hamakom. By the way, according to the Rambam, yeah, the Seder plate's off the whole night, like we do. The whole Haggadah, the Seder plate's off, like we do. You say the Paschal lamb is because. You lift up the maror and you say this maror is because they embittered our ancestors. And you lift the matzah and you say this matzah is because we didn't have time to leave Egypt until HaKadosh Baruch Hu redeemed us. Nowadays, you say Pesach, which our ancestors ate because we don't have it. So in those days, they would say this Pesach. But nowadays, we don't have the Korban Pesach, so we say the Pesach which our ancestors eat. Interestingly, Rambam's order is Pesach, Matzah, Maror. Pesach, Matzah. Pesach, Maror, Matzah. Pesach, Maror, Matzah is the Rambam's order, seemingly to begin with bad and to end with good. But the order which we do nowadays in Haggadah is Pesach, Matzah, and then maror. That's an interesting point. What's very interesting is when you get to and you say we say the whole Hallel and we thank Hashem, Hallelujah, and you finish off with the blessing, Sheikh Galanu who redeemed us from Egypt, right? And nowadays we add in, may he allow us to eat from the Korban Pesach. Umbarech borei pregefen, and you say Baruch Shtekashni, you say another borei pregefen and drink the second cup. Okay, that's all what we do. Well, aside from saying another bracha, but everything is like we do. Okay, this gets very interesting now. ואחר כך מברכת את הידיים, you do רוחצה, so you wash hands, ונוטל את דף שנית, you say, wash a second time with a ברכה, שהסיח דתו בשעת קריאת הגדה. Because you be מסיח דעת during the reading of the Haggadah. Okay, fine. So you say another Tadayim. Now if you're thinking to yourself, good question, why do you have to do Netilat Yadayim a second time, but not Borei Pri Adam a second time? You have to distinguish and say Netilat Yadayim is more Hesech Hadat, it's more, wash hands are far more active. Okay, and your hands have moved and they've touched things, and therefore you wash again, you say another bracha on Netilat Yadayim. Okay, fine. ולוקח שני רקיקים, you take two matzot, וחולק אחד מהם, ומניח פרוס לתוך שלם. Take two matzot, there's no three matzot. Remember, Rambam didn't have yachatz. You only have two matzot, there's no three matzot. It's only two matzot. And after Netilat Yadayim, so before motzi matzah, you take one matzah, you break it, and then, remember, clearly he had soft matzot, because otherwise what he's telling you to do doesn't work. Obviously he had that. And you fold the complete matzah and put in the complete matzah the broken matzah. So you have two matzot, you break one, and you put the broken pieces inside the complete matzah. And you say why do you not say on two complete ones like all other Shabbatot and Yom Tov? Because it says bread of affliction. Because it's lechem oni, we break one. Okay, full stop. Let's stop there. So according to Rambam, what happens is there's no three matzot. There's no three matzot. There's only two matzot. There's no yachatz. And when it comes to motzi matzah, before saying motzi lechem min haaretz, you break one, and then you wrap the broken pieces into the complete one, and then you say the brachot of the al achilat matzah, motzi lechem min haaretz and achilat matzah. What happened? Why do we not do that? Why did Shulchan Aruch say not to do that? Because other Rishonim disagreed and said, no, you still have to have lechem mishneh. By the way, Rav Kapach says something fascinating. He says, according to Rambam, and this is the minhag of his minhag, he says, is they do this the entire Pesach. Because Shiv'at Yamim Tochal Alav Matzot Lechem Oni. He says, even on Shabbat Chol HaMoed, and during the daytime meals on the second day of Pesach, on the seventh day of Pesach, eighth day of Pesach, they do not have two matzot. They have one and a half. They have one complete matzah and one broken matzah wrapped into the full matzah. This order of the Rambam applies to all 7 days of Pesach, Rav Kapach says. I don't know if Yemenites do this. It'll be interesting to check if any Yemenites do this today. Okay? That's what Kapach says. They do the whole 7 days of Pesach. I'm sure there are still Yemenites to do that. What happened? The other Rishonim said, no, you need to have double. Complete. You need to fulfill the Gemara says, Lechem Oni, you say the bracha on broken matzah. He said, make 3 matzot. Break one matzah earlier on, and that's how Yahatz came into play, because of this, of the idea of having it there. And then you'll have 3 matzot at the Hamotzi Lechem Haaretz. You'll say Hamotzi Lechem Haaretz on all 3 matzot, and then you drop the bottom matzah, so you're left 2 matzot, one of them broken, and then you say al achilat matzah on the broken one. That's what we do today. But Rambam didn't have that. Rambam had 1.5. They had 2 matzot, 1 broken and 1 complete. After this, korech matzah maror ka'achad medaber b'charoset. This is in the temple times. You tie the matzah maror, you wrap them together and you dip it in the charoset and you say, Asher tetzivanu al achilat matzot umrorim. And then you say the bracha that Asher tetzivanu on eating the korban pesach, on eating the chagiga, on eating the celebratory meat. And then you say Asher tetzivanu on eating the korban pesach. You say 2 brachot. בזמן הזה שאין לנו קורבן, nowadays don't have, אחר שמברך המוציא לחם, nowadays what we do is we say המוציא לחם, חוזר מברך לחם מצה, you say straight away מוציא מצה, ומטבל מצה בחרוסת ואוכל. You dip the matzah in haros and you eat it, וחוזר מברך לחם מרור, מטבל מרור בחוזר. And then you say השקט יוצא לחם מרור, and you dip in the maror, in the haros and you eat it. But don't dip it too much. וחוזר וכורך מצה ומרור, מטבל בחרוסת ואוכל בלי ברכה זו מקדש. And then you do and then you eat them together. That's korech, to remember the temple. Okay, so that's what we do nowadays. But the major difference is that Rambam says, first it's just interesting to see the brachot which they would say in the times of the Bet HaMikdash. But secondly, he says you dip the matzah in haroset. There's great discussion on that, because you need to taste the matzah. Okay, but that's what Rambam says. They would actually dip the matzah in the haroset. Okay, then he finishes off. Then you have your meal, you eat and drink what you want. And then you have, nowadays, in the temple times, you would have another kazait of the Korban Pesach, and you wouldn't eat afterwards. Nowadays, we have a kazait of matzah, and you don't eat afterwards. So that you have the taste of matzah in your mouth the entire night. And then you do Ma'im HaHaronim, you say Birkat HaMazon, and you drink the third cup. And then you say Hallel on the fourth cup, and then you say Hallelucha, and you say Borei Pregefen on the fourth cup. And you don't drink anything else the whole night aside from water. You should pour a fifth cup and say Hallel on the fifth cup. Hodur Nakitov. I know Bavel as well. Because it's not the same obligation, but you should still do it. You can continue Hallel in another room if you want. So this is actually in the Gemara. There's about the fifth cup. Many Rishonim held like this. I spoke about this in the past. Nowadays, we don't do well. Actually, it's very interesting. This I talked about this in my daily halacha last year or a couple of years ago. I was informed that some Sephardi communities did have a fifth cup. Okay, I can't remember which ones. It's not our custom, Syrian custom, but I am informed that a number of Doron, what's the Moroccan minhag? You have a fifth cup. You pour the fifth cup.
Or, but I don't think they drink.
But is that the problem? Is I think when I heard about this, I argued it came from Ashkenazim.
Right.
But I'm not sure. It seems it does go back some time. This minhag of actually having the fifth cup, and to say halal on it. Okay, the remaining halachot in this chapter just talk about. So that's the whole seder. There's no nirtza. Okay, there's no thing, and there's no shir hashirim, although that's our custom to say it. Yeah. Okay, that's it really. Okay, good. So we've seen some very interesting points in our Rambam. Quite a few different to what we do nowadays, but I think it's nice to be aware of that, of the different understandings of the Gemara and practices. Any questions? So there's no more shiurim now. Sorry, one more thing. There's no more shiurim after Pesach. After Pesach, Hashem will resume the weekly shiurim Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Monday, Hama speak at 6. Tuesday, Moreh Nevuchim at 8, and Thursday, continue Chot Shabbat at 6 after Pesach. Yeah. Any questions before we conclude? Yes, Robert.
No, Brooke. Yeah, very, very quick question. Did the Rambam suggest we had 5 questions in the times of the temple that we've lost the one?
The Mishnah says that. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, because everybody kind of goes on and on about before this and before that, and they all. But actually, the questions were 5. I mean, it's a bit. It's sort of what's the word? Makes a lot of these brush shots a little bit.
Correct. Yeah.
A bit of a stretch.
Correct. By the way, there aren't 4 questions. I always emphasize this. There's 1 question with 4 parts.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's 1 question with 4. Or in those days, 5 parts. But yeah, it's 1 question with 4 parts. Yeah. Okay. Good. Erev Tov, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat HaGadol Shalom. Hida says to wish each other Shabbat HaGadol Shalom. Shabbat HaGadol. Wishing everyone Shabbat HaGadol Shalom. And Hag Sameach. Tizku Abot Nimot V'Tovot. Besorot Tovot, everyone. Bye-bye.
1 second. The Pesach means the lamb, right? Pesach is the lamb.